Hi, everyone. Connie Myers here with Kick Butt Leadership. Another one of my fabulous people that I'm interviewing. I'm so excited about this gentleman. When I first read the name of his business and the name of his book, or method rather, I was like, okay, this is a person I really need to talk to. This is Clint Padgett. He is a Forbes book featured writer or featured author. He's also part of the Forbes speakers. And it frequently speaks at conferences on subjects of project management. Can't we all use a little bit of that? And teamwork, which is really critical. I'm actually going to dive a little bit deep into that teamwork stuff. His first book, called Project Success Method, is a unique, proven, and fire-tested methodology which allows companies, groups, managers to learn and develop consistency in the way they plan, schedule, manage, control, and close out projects on time, per spec, and within budget in as little as 5 days. Okay, welcome, Clint Padgett.
And thanks for having me.
5 days. Thank you so much for joining me. So and then he also has a new book he's coming out. You said in January?
January 5th.
It's called How Teams Triumph, Managing by Commitment. And I talk a lot about that, so I think we'll have a good conversation about that as well. But the first question I ask everybody is that, were you a leader as a child?
I guess it depends on who you ask. I always thought so, but my younger brother would probably disagree. So I think I was.
All right. So what leadership skills did you learn as a child that you're using today?
I think the one that resonates the most with me is the ability to talk to individual people, no matter what their background, their socioeconomic class. My dad was a serial entrepreneur, so we had multiple businesses as I was growing up, and having been exposed to that since I was about 6 years old, working in the store, sweeping floors, picking up trash, working my way up to carrying out the groceries, whatever. You just learn how to deal with people, and that's a skill that many of us need and some of us don't have. And I think that's one that I got to learn early in my life.
Oh, that's such an important skill to have. And some people shy away from it. It doesn't make it. I'm a farm girl from Nebraska, so what you see is what you get. Right. And it's always amazed me how people kind of look and pick and choose who they think they want to associate with or be with, when in reality you can learn so much from everybody. So tell us a little bit about Project Success in your company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've been around for almost 40 years, and all we really do is three things. They're all around project management. We teach classes in project management on the Project Success Method, which is the first book. And then we do consulting work where we do people that are taking our training say, this is great, but let's go do it in my environment with my people, with my verbs and my terminology and my unique set of challenges. And we help them plan and execute their projects. And then we can also help set up project offices if they need that infrastructure.
So you were mentioning before we went live, some companies you've worked with. Would you kind of go through a small list of those so people will know what you do?
Yeah, we work with some companies like Coca-Cola, for instance. I'm actually a former Coca-Cola employee from long ago. We've done many projects for Coca-Cola, including helping them plan all their activations around the major sporting events.
Wow.
Been an owner's role for some of the biggest construction projects in New York's Times Square in the last couple of 15 years, where we help manage those big, huge schedules for companies like Bank of America. So really typically big names. We do a lot of work in Silicon Valley for a couple of semiconductor chip companies. So typically Fortune 1000.
Wow. So, how is Project Success Method different from any other project management system?
Well, it's a little bit different in that there's really kind of hybrid, right? So there's more traditional waterfall approach is what people often talk about. There's also agile, which came out of the software development industry. And so what we do is we kind of hybrid approach between the two. And we take some of the best features of waterfall. We take the best features of agile. We blend them all together. And that's why we think the Project Success Method is the best of all.
So when you say, can you give us an example of maybe the pieces in place that you go through with your method? Maybe give an explanation of a company or something that you've done this with and kind of explain how it works.
Sure. So when we come in, we train people on the front end, and then we stick around and help them plan their project. And so in the front end, what we do is write a charter, which is really just a conversation amongst ourselves about what is the project and what isn't it. What's the scope of the project? Let's come to an agreement. Because what we found is that if you have a project with 15 people, there's probably 10 different opinions about the project. So we get everybody to agree on what that is. And then we make sure that it actually matches what our customer wants us to go do. Then we move into the identifying the activities. So if I'm in marketing, what are the marketing tasks? If I'm in engineering, what are the engineering tasks? That again happens through a conversation about each individual. What are your tasks? Then we put them all together and build a schedule for the project. And that's usually done in the first 2 or 3 days. We can get all that done. But then, of course, the secret sauce really is to remember that project plans are static. They're not cast in, project plans are not static. They're not cast in stone. They are going to change over the life of the project. And so you have to come back periodically, whether that's every week or every other week, and modify the plan to make it correct and accurate and valid again. And so through using these techniques, we've had some clients who have been able to save significant amounts of time on their projects and be able to be much more successful in the ones that they execute.
I actually talk a lot about visioning, and I almost explained it exactly the same way as you just did. Just a different terminology.
Speaking the same language. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I noticed when I was going through your website and looking at your book and stuff that you do a lot in different countries. I think you said you were in 25 countries on 6 continents. Is that correct?
Yes. Right before the pandemic hit, I was in India, 3 different cities in India in 2 weeks. And before that, I was in Germany. So that's just typical for us.
So with so many companies having either offices overseas or is it different in the different countries you're in? Do you have to revamp your methodology with project manager depending on the country you're in, or is it pretty much all the same?
We use the same techniques and the same methodology. It just, you have to take into fact the cultural issues, take those into account. So language plays a role. The same words might mean different things in different languages. So you have to be cognizant and careful of using a word that one culture might find offensive that nobody else does. You have to learn these things, but the process is the same. It's all about laying out the work and then also getting accountability and ownership around those things. So the process doesn't really change. It's just that you have to be aware of the environment you're working in when you do go global.
Yeah, I can see where that'd be very. Is there a tip you could give some company out there if they have employees in other countries that you find to be very helpful when you're starting that process?
Well, I think the number one rule we have is you need to get people face to face in a room together, which I know in this pandemic world is kind of frowned upon. But so we're trying to use Zoom and these electronic means of doing that. It's much more difficult. But once the pendulum hopefully swings back when the vaccine comes out, you're going to want to get people together face to face, because what you find is when you try to do things electronically, you don't get the same level of commitment that you do if I'm face to face, eyeball to eyeball with you in a room. I don't make the same connection to you physically as I would electronically. So when I'm electronic, you're just an email address to me. I don't know you from anybody else. You're just another name at my company. But if we come together and plan the project in the same room together over, say, a 3-day period, I learned that you have kids my kids' ages, or you have grandkids my grandkids' ages, or we have the same passions. I love scuba diving, you love scuba, whatever those things are. We understand that, and you become a person that I feel connected to, and then I'm going to hold myself accountable to delivering, because I don't want to let you down. And you don't get those kind of relationships when you do it all electronically. So in our world, we will fly people from across the globe all to come together on the front end of the project. And knowing that we can run the rest of the 2 years, can all be done virtually and remotely, as long as we establish those bonds in those first 3 to 4 days.
I think that is so critical. I talk a lot about team visioning and getting buy-in and in my leadership stuff. And I agree with you. I think the body language and the interaction. John Maxwell says you have to touch a heart before you ask for a hand. Right. And I think it's so true. You need to have something personal. There's got to be some kind of personal connection there to really make it all work.
It really does. And that's the thing about real world projects. And if we take ourselves out of projects, just real world teams, it's about having that connection, because let's say I'm a project manager at a company. Most of the world today works at a matrix organization, whereas the project manager, I don't have any formal authority over the people on my team. They don't work for me. They work for their functional manager, and they're dotted line to my project plus 5 other projects. So not only do I not own the people on my project team, I'm competing for their time with others. So the only way that I'm going to be successful in that environment is that the individual team members hold themselves accountable, because I can't make them do it.
Right. Exactly. That's so key. While you were talking, I was thinking about, I have a couple sons that are in the corporate world, and I have one right now that's has some issues. I think it boils down to just what you talked about. In your book, you said good project management often conflicts with basic human nature. What did you mean by that?
So basic human nature, let's even take ourselves back before the pandemic. This was actually a problem then. It's just been exacerbated when working remotely. Human nature is to want to take the shortest route to get something done, the easiest way. And if I want to, I have this burning desire to want to check things off on my to-do list. Well, the easiest way that I can do that is if I send you an email or a text message saying it's done. What I'm literally doing is throwing it over the fence and hoping I never hear from you again. Because then I could check it off my list. I'm happy and I'm off to the next thing. What I don't like doing is walking down the hallway and saying, hey, Connie, can we talk about this for a minute? Because what I might learn is not only am I not done, I just added 3 more things to my to-do list. So human nature says, I don't want that. I want to take the path of least resistance, which actually conflicts with good project management, which is the fact we need to have conversations about where am I? Am I really done? Did I really deliver what you wanted or not?
Wow. Wow. Well, tell us a little bit about how teams triumph managing by commitment. And what do you mean managing by commitment?
So we actually laid the groundwork already so far in this conversation, because when I say managing by commitment, as a project manager, I often do not own the people on my project team, meaning I don't have the authority to make them do it. So to be successful in that environment, the individual team members have to hold themselves accountable, and we have to have accountability amongst ourselves, called mutual accountability. And the way we accomplish that in the project success method is really 3 things we do. The first thing we do is we have a rule that says if your name is going to be assigned as the owner of a task, meaning you have to manage that activity, you must be physically present in the room and say, that's my task. So people often say, I'm afraid to leave the room because when I do, my name gets assigned to everything. Then you love our process, because that cannot happen. You must physically be in the room and say, that's my task and I own it. You establish ownership. That's the first ground rule for engagement with accountability. The second thing we do is only that person is allowed to give me the duration for their task, not their boss, not their functional manager, not the project manager, only that person, because only that person knows how many projects I'm working on right now. Can I work like this weekend, or do I have to pick up the kids, take them to camp? So only they know their true schedule, and they're going to give you the most valid, the most accurate duration that there is. And then the third rule is only that person can tell us what we call the predecessors. They tell us the work that other people need to finish before they can start their task. They say, well, if Connie's done with this activity and Clint's done with that activity, my activity will take 3 days. When we give the people those 3 things, they own that task. They've taken accountability and ownership of it, and they have commitments. And now we say managing by commitment is because I'm committing to get this done for you.
I love that. I actually totally understand that. When I was a FEMA inspector for 7 years and a trainer, and I was writing my vision for the year. This was last year, 2019, and I was writing my vision for what I wanted, and I had this fleeting thought about what did that time with FEMA have to do with anything that I'm doing today. And about 3 weeks later, I got an email from the California Association of Realtors saying, this is a list of topics we want, and one of them was disasters. And I immediately wrote back and said, nobody gets that one on disasters but me. I was committed.
Right.
I was committed.
Absolutely.
So I totally get that. One of the things that I was looking at here is you said that what are some of the key traits of being a good communicator?
I think the number one rule is probably, it seems like it makes sense, but people seem to ignore it. If you want to be a good conversationalist and be able to communicate, you need to use your ears more than your lips. If you're going to be a conversationalist, you need to listen at least as much, if not more, than you're talking. If you're not, then you're just yelling at people. And to be a conversationalist, to have true communication, you need to have a back and forth dialogue. And that's going to happen by listening at least as much as you talk.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think so many times what people do, and I'm sure we're all guilty of this, is start thinking about something you're going to say after the person gets done talking, and you don't really hear what the person said in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So I was talking to Allison Wood Brooks, who's a PhD at Harvard Business School, and she has a phrase called boomer asking. And boomer asking is where I ask you a question, don't really care about the answer, just want to get the ball back in my court so I can talk about what it is that I want to talk about. And that's not having a conversation.
That's called boomer asking?
Boomer asking. Like boomerang, but boomer asking.
I love that. I think I'll start using that.
There you go.
So, in your book, when you're talking about teams, what are some of the key points you're trying to make in the book about team commitment?
So I think it comes down to the fact that we have to be realistic about what it is our strengths and weaknesses are. And a lot of times the technical person on the team will be the one that's promoted to be the project manager of a new project, only to realize they are sorely lacking the skills they need to be successful in that environment. And I'll talk about myself because I'm an engineer by training. I'm electrical engineering from Georgia Tech is where my background lies. And one of the things I noticed was when I was in school, I worked really hard to get good grades. There was always a few people who got better grades than I did. But then I was okay with that in the end because I realized I had dates that weekend. So social skills actually mattered. Well, social skills matter in project work as well. I mean, you have to have that ability to talk to people. And one of the things I try to do in the book is help that person who's really more comfortable in a cubicle solving complex problems to realize that we have to be collaborative in order to be successful. And we have to take ourselves out of our comfort zone and collaborate with people that maybe we don't speak the same language they do. Maybe they speak marketing and I speak engineering, but to be successful as an organization, we need to work together. And so I just try to lay out the ground rules of why we do that and how we do that in the book.
Yeah. So seeing as how you've got a podcast that talks about is conversations and you're writing books about communication, the whole Zoom thing, is it getting to be too much? Are we truly experiencing Zoom fatigue?
We actually are. And so some of the things that cause Zoom fatigue, one is interesting is the fact that when you're looking on a Zoom call, you see your picture on the screen, you see your face live on the screen. And then that actually causes anxiety. We don't see that in real life, face-to-face communications, because I just assume I look good. I don't know that my hair is messed up and that my button's off or whatever, but in the Zoom call, I'm constantly focusing on my face and thinking, oh, is that really how I look? I look terrible. I look pale today, whatever that might be. And that causes anxiety. The other thing that comes along with that is technology issues. It turns out that even a small 1.2 millisecond delay in how long it takes somebody to respond, you're thinking, oh my goodness, am I frozen? Is my connection not working? Am I muted and don't realize it? So all these things just play a role in causing anxiety around the electronic web calls, Zoom calls, whatever they may be.
I have to tell you, I experienced that this last Saturday. I do something every Saturday called to 70 and Beyond. And I was like, it was all about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I was like, I thought it was really good. And I get all done and I go back and it's up on Facebook already because it does it naturally. And you can see my mouth moving, but there's no sound. And I freaked out. And then I did it again and it was the same. It turned out my microphone on Be Live was off. So I mean, I was in total, and it was it was one of the better ones I've ever done, of course. It didn't work, right?
For sure.
My son works at it's an international company out of Bend, Oregon, and he's very much a social kind of person. He's the head planner for the business, and he was talking about how he feels the lack of having the water cooler conversation or the hallway conversation. He was really, really missing that because of having to be working from home. I'm sure that's probably pretty important in any kind of communication.
It's one of the things that we simply cannot replicate virtually. And that is these natural organic water cooler conversations, or on the way to get the coffee, get coffee. There's so many natural conversations that happen on your way to the restroom or to the lunchroom or to go get coffee. You bump into a colleague, you have this organic, natural conversation that ends up solving a problem you didn't know you had, or puts a thought starter in your head that you need to think more about that ends up being some great epiphany we have later. And those are not going to happen in electronic communications, because even if you do Zoom calls, when I'm on a Zoom call for 4 hours, we have breaks built in. I'm going to put my headset down. I'm going to walk to my kitchen and get coffee while you walk to your kitchen. Those serendipitous meetings are not happening. And you miss those. It actually, even if it's not business related, it's part of what makes us feel like we're part of a community or part of a tribe. And you're not going to replicate that unless you're very, very proactive in electronic communications.
Wow. I think you're so right. Do you have any suggestions of how to even though we can't make it happen like it should happen, any suggestions, like when you're on a Zoom call or anything that will help the communication?
I think you have to be proactive in that. It's almost like you have to have separate calls. So the Zoom calls are always one on many. where you're talking about an issue. But what you can't replicate in the Zoom call is tapping you on the shoulder and whispering something to you one-on-one, right? You can kind of do it with the chat, but it's not quite the same. So what I would recommend is set up some separate calls that are just to establish community. So I'm going to call you and say, hey, not to talk about a project or the company, just how are you doing? How are you holding up? How's your son doing? Is he impacted by the fires? I'm going to have this conversation we would normally have in the workplace organically. I just need to be proactive about making that happen now. And maybe I don't do it through a Zoom call all the time, because that's another thing that leads to fatigue, is this constant on. But I still want to be able to see your face sometimes. So maybe sometimes I'll do it through Zoom. Sometimes it's just a phone call to say, hey, how you doing? But we do need to be more proactive, and that's the only way to make that happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I'm very much a social person, and we just did I'm a part of something called Woman Up, and it's an initiative underneath the California Association of Realtors, and we just had our virtual conference, and we're all avatars, and we could hear each other. And there were sessions, and there were no hugs, obviously. Right. And you could go to these little circles and you could have a private conversation, but it wasn't the same. I mean, it was absolutely wonderful considering what it was. But yeah, getting that, I agree with you. I think you need to reach out to people individually and get face to face with them for sure.
I know it's hard for people to believe that I'm an electrical engineer and I'm so passionate about people, and I'm such a touchy-feely person, but I was actually talking to somebody at Warner Brothers Pictures many years ago now over lunch, explaining our process. And he stops me and he goes, wait a minute, I thought you were an engineer. What is all this touchy-feely people stuff? And I laughed and I said, well, until people don't do projects, I've got to have touchy-feely people stuff in my process, because that's who does the project. And if I can't motivate and lead that group, I'm not going to be successful. So I do miss interaction. I miss handshakes. I miss hugs. I'm from the Deep South, so hugs are a big part for us. And I love my family, but I like to go talk to somebody else after the last 7 months, right? So I look forward to the return to normalcy.
Yeah, well, let's hope soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to say, thank God for Zoom, though, and the other video conferencing stuff, because if we didn't, just think a few years ago, if we didn't have this, oh my God, it would have been terrible.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the text messages and the emails, they're great. Phone calls are probably a step better, because now we can have a dialogue instead of one-way communications. And Zoom and WebEx and these other alternatives are fantastic. I don't think they're ever going to take the place of the face-to-face. And people often say, well, it's the same. And my point is, it's not the same for several reasons. One is, even if you have your static picture up, I don't know what you're actually doing. Even if you have your live picture up, I can only see the little square of your face. And I don't see the nonverbal cues about where you cross your arms in a defensive posture because you don't agree with something I just said, or that you're looking down, I think taking notes, but you're actually playing on your phone. I don't see that you're tapping your feet or your fingers because you're bored, right? I don't get those nonverbal cues as much. And even think about a real world situation. If there's 25 or 30 people in the room, maybe I'm looking to the right of the room, focusing on a conversation. My brain notices something out of my peripheral vision to the left that says, hey, look over here. Maybe that's because in eons past, I was a saber-tooth tiger about to come eat me for lunch. But my brain says something important is happening. Look over there. And I'm able to look and focus. You don't do that in the Zoom. You just see 30 squares on the screen. You can't. It's just not the same. So while it is certainly better, it will never take the place, I believe, of face-to-face.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I cannot wait until I can get back out and speak again and be able to communicate and get together with the people that I care about. I have a pretty large network, and I'm just so excited about it. Sooner or later we'll all get together again and actually give people hugs. Yeah, for sure.
I agree.
So your new book is coming out in January. How long has Project Success Method been out?
So that one came out in 2009. The process has been around since 1983, but I wrote that book in 2009, and the new one comes out obviously next year.
And awesome. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how can they find you?
They can find me two different places. They can just go to ClintonMPadgett.com, or they could find me on the website at projectsuccess.com. Those are the two best ways.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. It's fascinating. I want to have more conversation with you about this because it's a success. I talk about it a lot on how to get it, and communication is and commitment to communication and to people is a very important part of what I do as well. So I'm looking forward to hopefully another conversation in the future.
That'd be
Thank you
awesome.
so much for joining me and giving out this wonderful information. I highly recommend. I downloaded the book. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but it is full of lots of good information. If you are a leader or if you're the head of a project of some type, I think you'll find it very fascinating and helpful. Like I was telling him beforehand, the project I've been working on for the last year, I wish I would have read the book first. So,
Right.
anyway, so Clint, thank you so much for being on with me, and good luck with your new book and have all the success.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Connie.
Okay, I will be back again with another fabulous interview shortly. Bye now.